Okay guys, so I just wanted to do a really quick trade recap of the trade that I took today, and we're just going to go ahead and get into it. I want to start with the top-down analysis. Coming in from Friday, the market was chopping lower, and on Friday we get this expansion into the low, and the daily candle closes as a PSP, right? And so at the close of Friday's candle, we get a confirmed true reversal point with two stages of crack. The first one being this SMT, and then the second one being this PSP closure here, right? And I'm going to draw out that SMT on our assets, right? And we get that SMT and we get our closure, right? And so this is our C2 closure. That is a confirmed true reversal point. And then for Monday, which is going to be our C3 candle, we expect expansion. Where do we expect expansion to? Into the next daily high, the next relevant high in the range. Awesome. Now we can drop into our 4-hour time frame, and we can start to frame our 4-hour profile for the day. Now we open up with a gap right here on both NASDAQ, ES, and YM. So all assets open up with a gap. I'm just going to draw out our daily open. And the function of this gap is asset synchronization and the catch-up of NASDAQ and ES into this high here, into that high, right? As you can see, this high gets ran by YM on Friday, right? And as per our asset sync or algorithm 1 logic, we expect this SMT to break as YM consolidates here, and which happens immediately, right? Normally we get strength switch signatures, change in Kraken correlation signatures, and we get different signatures to show us that we're going to move into this high. All right. So the daily candle opens with YM consolidating, and Nasdaq expanding, and YM expanding. All right. So very clearly we can immediately tell just by proximity of the drawn liquidity, which is this high here, that ES is going to be our strongest asset, YM is going to be our lagging asset, and NASDAQ is going to be our middle asset, right? It's the furthest from the drawn liquidity, but it still has some sort of bullish structure. It also has this large gap to work through. This large gap right here, right? And now if we look at our 4-hour candles, right, we do have some SMT present here, right? Between the 6 p.m. candle, we have an SMT here. We have the 10 p.m. candle closing as a PSP. And then we have another SMT between the 2 a.m. and the 6 p.m. or the 10 p.m. candle, right? So London lows diverge with Asia, and then moving into the session now, we can start to see if we can fractalize this idea on our hourly chart. Now, if we move into the hourly, right, we can see prior to 9:30, we have two stages of SMT here, right? There's no PSP present, but we do have two stages of SMT. And if we observe our phases of price, we can see that YM prior to 9:30 is consolidating within this range that it created at 6 p.m. And NASDAQ is expanding, consolidating, expanding, consolidating, and ES is doing the same, right? Expansion, consolidation, expansion, consolidation. And we know that our next phase of price, after consolidation, that precedes expansion, right? So consolidation that comes after expansion can only lead to more consolidation. And if we're going to reverse from that, more expansion. And if we're going to reverse from the consolidation, it needs to be in the function of accumulation, manipulation, and then distribution, right? So we get this two stages of SMT here, and then dropping down to our 5-minute, right, at 9:30. Once all the assets systeed above this high, or systeed, and YM closed above this range, and we got movement away from this two-stage SMT, I decided to put on a little bit of risk on ES, right? And I was able to fractalize it one more time on the 1-minute chart, with this two-stage SMT fill, right? And we get a PSP there as well. Get a PSP there as well. And so I entered right about here. I put my stop right at this low here, and I targeted this high. And what ended up happening was YM decided to reverse, right? And so at this point in time, once the 9 a.m. candle had closed at the PSP, we need to see if the next phase of price at 10 a.m. offers a reversal, right? So the thesis would have been, let me get back to this. All right, the thesis here would have been, right, YM closes here, we sweep this low, right, and then we can trade higher. And unfortunately, we don't get that sweep, and instead on the lower time frame, YM offers us a consolidation after this expansion, which supports one thing only, and that's expansion lower, right? So I get stopped out on this for about 0.5 R. I actually didn't even know I put 0.5 R on, but I did. I thought I put on a full R, but we get that expansion lower, right? And then after we trade into MOP, right? We trade into midnight opening, right? We need to see if our daily bias is still being supported, right? And one of the things for that daily bias is our advanced premium and discount range, right? And so the same way on the daily chart that we wouldn't want to see the 50% of this wick here, right? If we're bullish, we don't want to see the 50% of this wick get invalidated. It's the same idea here, but we're going to be using this discount, premium and discount range here, right? So we're going to be using this range here, right? If our daily bias is to be supported, right, then this move lower is a function of retracement, right? And if we move from expansion to retracement, right, and we're framing this move lower as retracement, we're going to get expansion afterwards, right? So we still have the S&P as our relevant draw on liquidity, and we can see that NASDAQ retraces the least. YM completely reverts the range, right? And ES trades into discount. Now, you could trade NASDAQ, but seeing that ES has the closest proximity draw on liquidity, and it's relatively stronger in the range when it first opened up, we're going to be looking to trade the S&P, right? And so we need our two stages of crack. So let's go ahead and identify that, right? We have this low here. Well, first, is it, let's see if we get our two stages of crack, right? Number one being we get this 1 hour PSP. 1 hour PSP. On the 4 hour, we got another one right here. Yep, we got this crack here between NASDAQ and the S&P, and then obviously YM and the other assets. Right, as YM takes that full range low, right? So now we have our two-stage crack. We have two stages of SMT. We have a PSP, so it's really 3 stages, and we want to drop down to a lower time frame and see if this idea is fractalized and if it's being supported, right? Right, so there's this SMT, and we can see we have another stage of SMT. So we do have a 2-stage SMT on the 30-minute as well, right? And that idea is also supported on the 15-minute chart, right? And so once the 11 a.m. candle closes, we can immediately expect the 12 p.m. candle, to expand higher. Why? This is our C2 closure. We want to get involved in C3, right? The assets are displacing in sync, right? They are cis-D'ing in sync, right? If we look at this high here, they're cis-D'ing in sync, right? You can see that strength on all the assets across there. So the moment I saw that, I went ahead and I put some risk on here. I risked this candle body's low, and I'm targeting the highs, right? And I put about half R on here, right? And this 15-minute candle closes as a PSP as well, and then we get another 2-stage, right? This time we get the SMT confirming the PSP. You can get involved in this candle as well, right? You can get involved here, right? Maybe as this candle's closing, you can risk this low, trade to this high, you still get your 2R. But what I did instead was I added some contracts, so my total came out to here, and I moved my stop up to this protected swing low, and I targeted the highs for 4R, ending the day on plus 2R. Right? And hopefully you guys saw that logic of how we never abandoned our bias and we stuck to our guns. And that's kind of how I saw the day come in and come through. Yeah.